As always, we love talking to Steve Price. You can listen to his show on the Listener app or the Triple M regional network around the country. The great man joins us now from the oh-so-free state of Victoria. Now, great man, like many who watch this program, disappointment on Saturday. But I want to leapfrog some of that disappointment and talk about where the Liberal Party is right now. Does it not say everything that is bad about the Victorian Liberal Party that there might only be 25 members in the Parliament and 5 of them think they should be the leader, which means all of them think that they've got at least 5 people who'll vote for them?
It's quite remarkable, isn't it? I mean, and knowing that we were going to talk about the future, not the past, which I think is a very sensible thing to do, and I know you started that discussion last night, the Liberal Party just simply need a charismatic figure that's going to get people to vote for them. I mean, we've been through 23 of the last 26 years in Victoria with Labor government. So it should come as no surprise that Daniel Andrews won. There's not been a Liberal leader here as Premier since Ted Baillieu, who couldn't even last a full term as a Liberal Premier. Where are the charismatic leaders? I mean, you go back through what's happened, Paul, over the last 26 years. You go through Kane and Kerner and Brax, you got Brumby, and now you got Andrews. All you've had in the middle is one bloke who sort of took the state with him, was divisive, but got things done, and that's Jeff Kennett.
A bit of swagger, dare I say, is needed in politics, but also,
correct.
Again, talk about doubling down on your problems when all 5 of them are blokes, all 5 of them, and again, I'm not up for sort of diversity for the sake of it, but if there's an area you need to improve upon, but your assumption is, no, let's put up another beige dude and see what happens, well, guess what's going to happen again in 4, 8 and 12 years' time, regardless of what the ideas are?
Well, that's right. And you do need to discover some talent. Now, where that talent's going to come from, who would know? But who would have thought also that Daniel Andrews is going to end up being the longest-serving Labor Premier in Victoria? He's hardly Mr. Charisma. And, of course, as I said to you last week, they might build a bronze statue to this bloke. But I think one of the things we've got to look at, Paul, when we dig down into this result, and I found this really interesting today, 60% of the vote, by the way, is counted now, and Labor's clearly going to have a strong victory. But in the northern and western suburbs of Melbourne, now these are comparable in Sydney to the west and southwest of Sydney. In these suburbs, there was a swing against Labor of 5.8%. So the working class folk who live in those suburbs, they're the ones who jump in the dual cab utes and come in to town and do the work all day long on the building sites. They didn't like what they were being fed up by Daniel Andrews. Now, the unions played their part and ran campaigns on his behalf, most of them, the Electrical Trades Union and the CFMEU. Imagine having them as your mates. But there was a 5.8% swing by working class suburbs against Labor. Now, surely that sends a message to the Liberal Party. Let's get back to the sensible centre. Let's start telling people what we really stand for. Let's just run a campaign saying Dan Andrews is no good and come up with some decent plans of our own with a good charismatic leader. I mean, I'd love to be able to nominate one, but I can't find one.
Yeah, correct. Also, I spent a lot of time last night talking about how Australia, after an election, you should always turn around and see Australia for what it is rather than what you think it was or what you want it to be. So we had a look at some of the numbers that came out of the census, the reality now that the baby boomers are the same size as the millennials, with Gen X in the middle. Their values sometimes cross over, but are also incredibly different. As a bloke who, well and truly is aware of the types of attitudes of people who watch this channel, but you have great exposure to things like the people over on the project, are there common areas between these two generations?
Yeah, of course there are, and there always is. I mean, you have the fringes on both sides, and then you've got the sensible middle. And if you talk to young Australians who are in their mid-20s to their mid-30s, particularly those that work in labouring jobs, people who work in, real industries, day after day using their hands, they are not about these woke ideas that everyone else thinks is the most important issues going around. I mean, they're not the ones that are voting for the Greens to bring in all sorts of wacky ideas that they have on their policy platform, if you read it. So, yes, there is a group of young Australians who would vote coalition or vote Conservative. They just need someone to latch on to. I mean, and I can't see that Conservative person here. And to be honest, I don't really see it in Dominic Perrottet in New South Wales either. Labor has somehow discovered some of these political leaders that young people do like. You think of the bloke in South Australia, and I don't know what you make of Chris Minns in New South Wales, but probably pretty similar. But the Conservative side of politics, it doesn't seem to be able to find that sort of person.
It's a very good point. And then my final one here is the Premier is very clear that Victoria is a progressive state. We know that the Greens are going to end up with essentially the biggest block of votes on the crossbench in the upper house. But 1.4% of people voted for the Victorian Socialists. Can you imagine that there are people in the community of Victoria who think the Greens are too soft?
I can't believe that. Can you believe that? I mean, that's just a pee take, surely. People are just going in there and ticking it because they think they might annoy Paul Murray on Sky one night. But, I mean, that is incredible. But on those Greens, you know how we talk about Stockholm Syndrome and we feel like we're captive of Dan and his cult. Well, the Greens are now surrounding the CBD. It looks like they're going to get Richmond. They've got the city of Melbourne itself. They've got Prahran and they've got out in Brunswick. So, I mean, God help, they're closing in on us. Adam Bant and his merry band of Green people are coming to get us. Imagine what's going to happen with all of those people in the parliament here.
39,317 Victorian Socialists. Remember, tomorrow morning you're listening to Steve Price on the Listener app. All
don't
right?
do that to me.